Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again. Believe in a power greater than what you are going through. When you don't know what to do, keep breathing.
That's right. When you don't know what to do, just keep on breathing. From the City of Angels in Los Angeles and the Big Apple in New York City, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver at caregiverdave.com, along with my lovely co-host, Adrienne Gruberg of the caregiverspace.org. Say hello, Adrienne.
Hello.
Oh. Coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on 25 global audio and video platforms, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Facebook Live, SoundCloud, Blog Talk Radio, and 20 more platforms all around the world. And we're so proud to be voted number one, numero uno, caregiver podcast of the top 50 on Player FM, and one of the top 6 best podcasts by Caring.com, as well as number 3 podcast out of thousands of caregiver podcasts on FeedSpot. And we have an exciting show planned for you today, but before we get started, I want to take this moment to thank my last week's guest, caregiver and publicist Jennifer Perry, otherwise known as Madam Perry, a former producer. No, she doesn't own a whorehouse. A former producer, host of her own entertainment shows on cable TV, radio shows. She will help you start a business and help you promote yourself, folks. And just a reminder, you can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews on all our sites I just mentioned, plus the 20 more, and our membership website, caregiverdave.com. Well, enough of that. Welcome to the show, Monique Chapman.
Hey.
So excited to have you on.
I am so excited to be here and meet both of you.
Oh, cool.
Thank
See,
you.
I was on Monique's show a few weeks ago, and it was a wonderful experience. I found out we have a lot in common.
He was
We have a lot in common, don't we? We're
Yes.
almost the same age.
Oh, so I'm your big sister. Let's put it that way.
Big sister.
Yeah.
You're my sister from a different mister. Oh,
Yeah.
I tried to make it rhyme. I didn't even know what that means.
There you go.
That was not bad.
Really? I
Really?
don't want to say mother because it doesn't rhyme.
Yes.
Doesn't
All
make-
right.
Yeah.
So why don't you take a minute, Monique, or two, and introduce yourself? I like to ask my guests, just who is Monique Chapman and why was she put on this earth?
Goodness. Well, I'm Monique.
You're unique and Monique.
Unique Monique. That was my real estate name when I was selling real
Oh.
estate.
All right.
Yeah, native New Yorker, upstate New York, Albany. I know folks down New York City way don't consider that New York, but yes, it is.
Oh, it's New York.
And I'm actually from a town outside of Albany called Guilderland. Okay, so I was born and
Guilderland.
raised in Guilderland, New York, born into a spiritual family. After managing McDonald's right out of college, had enough of that. I couldn't stand the kids anymore, so honestly. So no. Hamburger. But anyway, so after that, I got into sales, and the last 10 years of sales, I was traveling corporate sales all across America. C-level sales, selling packages, software packages, anywhere between $8 and $50 million. And I was in actually Rochester, New York, and I decided after being in Rochester, New York, and a crappy meeting with the company that I was working for, that I was done. So I got on the plane to come home. I didn't tell anybody anything. Got on the plane to come home, and as you're going over the plane, they can track, you can track where you're at, and I was over Minnesota. And I said, I'm done. I quit. So at that point in time, I landed in San Jose, went and got some boxes, packed up the computer, all the company's crap, sent it back to them with a nice note that I said I quit. Burning bridges is my thing. And, I came home, told my husband, he goes, well, what are we going to do? Because we're definitely a 2-family income. And I said, I don't know. I'll figure it out. And that was in 2000, and I opened my business 3 weeks later, and I didn't look back. Now, I
Wow.
don't suggest for everyone to do it that way, but that's what I did, and I knew I could figure it out and move forward. So I do intuitive consulting. So I give you intuitive consultations, also known as readings. I help people get rid of negative energy in their space. I Reiki master teacher, so I work with healing people. Ordained minister. So if you're getting married, I can do that. Or if you've left Earth and you need a service, I can do that. What else? I think that's kind of it. Been doing it full time again since 2000, but 30 years altogether. And I just tell people what to do.
Uh-huh.
So
So
mine,
is
I'm really good at talking to people, and first of all, I can sense people's energy, their frequency, so I can tell you about yourself or somebody else if that's what you're, looking for. Yeah,
So we
why
have
not?
my audience is our audience is burned out caregivers, and many of them are having trouble to cope. Many of them, go to God the traditional ways, and many of them
And
are
that's
into
fine.
the mysticism and things like that. So
Get many paths to
how
get to
can you
that one
help?
place.
Say again.
I said many paths to get to that one place, so it's okay. No judgment.
So
Yep.
what would you tell caregivers who are burned out, who aren't doing it well, who are not putting their needs first, who are giving and giving and giving until there's nothing left to give, and 30% of them actually die. That's a statistic
Yeah.
before their loved ones do, and many more become sicker than the ones they care for, eventually needing a caregiver of their own after they're hospitalized. So this is who you're talking to.
Okay, well, it's interesting. To be a caregiver, an effective caregiver, it's important to be selfish. And I don't mean selfish in the sense of,
Yeah,
oh,
I
I'm going to
agree.
take everything and it's all for me, but it's about selfish being self-care. When I was out giving talks and working with groups of women, I would tell them, take care of self first. I think on my interview with you, I think you shared the story, which I've shared with people all the time. If you're on the airplane and they say that yellow
Right.
container comes down, to take care of
Oxygen mask.
yourself first, then everybody else. When I was traveling and working, I was like, oh, heck no, I am not going to do that. I'm going to take
Right.
care of my babies first and then take care of me. But then it struck me, what if I took care of the babies, but I didn't survive? Who was going to take care of my babies? So,
Right.
I learned. So you got to self-care, take care of self first. What does that mean? That means finding your place of joy, your happy spot, if you will, and taking time there. If you're caregiving, at least for 1 hour a day, and I know it can sound tough, but for 1 hour a day, you do something that fills you up and brings you joy. The more you are fulfilled, the more you give to yourself, the more energy you have for someone else.
Hmm.
If you decide, oh, I got to do this and this and this out externally for everyone else, there's nothing left for you. And then you end up in therapy, you end up sick, and then you end up, as you said, leaving Earth before the person that you're
Hmm.
caring for does, because you've given too much. You didn't take the time to replenish. And,
Yeah.
it can be something simple. Half hour here of reading a book, another half hour there of watching TV. It doesn't have to be anything very hard, but you have to
Right.
find what floats your boat and keep that in your um, aura, in your area, because your audience won't get aura. So in your space,
Yeah, I know
gotta
about
watch who
aura.
I'm talking to. You got to keep the happiness for you in your space. That has to be number one, because if not, you don't thrive.
So what
You
does it
just
mean
don't.
when you say, how do you assist people to remember, keyword, to come from a place of fullness when helping others? Because helping others really takes your mind off of you, doesn't it? And you stop doing the stuff maybe that's self-sabotaging you. When you're helping others, you're not thinking about you anymore. You're thinking about them. I like to say that caregivers are so selfless that they can become selfish just to move that pendulum halfway, because they're not going to move it all the way over to selfish because it's just not in them. But they do need to move it several clicks of the dial, you know what I mean?
And when my mom, who's passed on now, she's been gone for 10 years now. Wow.
Hmm.
When she was very ill and needing care, we had a team of it was 6 of us that were going through something similar. And as we were going through this, we came up with ideas and suggestions to keep ourselves grounded so that we did do self-care. And the self-care, again, something as little as maybe getting up 15 minutes in the morning and doing something, enjoying your cup of coffee instead of running to the person right away to see what's going on. There are small things that you can do where I feel, you can be selfish. And again, it's not selfish in the sense that most people understand the word selfish to be. It's truly being selfish in the sense of self-care. Take your shower. If you're a lady and you like to have your nails done, do your nails, do your hair. Small things like that truly give you energy to work with other people.
Yeah, when I say too selfish, I'm talking about, okay, your loved one needs you, but you're neglecting their needs because you're being selfish. Yes, take care of their needs first. There is some things that you need to be unselfish about, but by and large, that's a small minority. Self-care is very important. And I personally think that caregivers, like I said, are so selfless. You will never, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say selfish is a number 1 or a number 0. You're never going to get that person to a number 10. You're lucky if you get them to a 5, maybe a 6, maybe a 7. But that's all I meant by that. So you were a caregiver for your mom.
Yeah, I was.
And what were the challenges and what were the rewards?
Some of the challenges. Well, my mom used to live with my sister. And my sister actually got tired of her, and she says, "Mom's going to come live with you." And I didn't realize. I knew my mother
nice.
I knew my mother had the physical.
Tired of her.
Yeah, literally. She came up and dropped her off.
That was very honest of her. That's a good thing.
She was doing self.
She knew her limits.
Okay, but she didn't tell the truth, and the truth was that we knew Mom had lung cancer, but I didn't know about the Alzheimer's. And a few times they would come over, she seemed a little spacey, but again, she's 90 years old, so you kind of get with that. And I didn't realize. Yeah, and I didn't realize she was Alzheimer's and was a runner. So, I get a room all fixed up for her, and we brought some of the furniture from my
She probably needed to be in a facility.
And she, stayed for a little while, but she would run. I mean, I had to put locks way up high on my doors so that she wouldn't run away and all of this.
You mean really run or just walk fast?
Run. My mom could still go.
Good shape, huh?
At 90, she was running.
Wow. She was in very good shape. And the lungs didn't seem to bother her when she was trying to escape and run away. But it came down to where I couldn't care for her as I would like to in the home because of the running. Okay. So I had to place her.
She needed 24-hour care.
I mean, there's self-danger, danger to herself.
Yes, and she needed more care than I could give on a consistent basis, so I placed her. The mistake with placing her was we put her in a decent home in Hayward, California, although they've been on the national news with this coronavirus thing.
Oh, they're one of the ones, huh?
But we put her there, and every day I'd go see her, and I'd check on her, and I would literally scream and yell at the nursing staff and the head nurse and all of this because they weren't like changing her diaper. They weren't doing the things that I felt that they should be doing because they were getting paid a nice amount of money to take care of my mom.
What would you do differently in finding a facility now so that doesn't happen to other people?
Not find one. Not find one. Yeah.
You would have kept her home?
I would have kept her home and brought in help.
Yes.
Yeah. You had the finances to do that?
Oh, yeah, but I just thought it would be easier for her to go. And,
I tell people,
taken care of.
Because a lot of them don't have the finances. So I tell people it is possible to find a really, really good facility. I mean, they're few and far between. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, maybe 1 in 10. A 9 in 10 I wouldn't put my cat in. But how do you find a good one? You make unannounced visits, and you do the smell test, see if it smells like urine. You walk down the hallway, see if everybody's staring at the blank walls or if there's actually programs that are engaging them and so on, stuff like that. There's things you can do. But, no guarantees.
And you do that, and it still doesn't mean it's a good facility because all that was done, and it was still,
Was it a facility that had a special
dementia wing.
staff um, for Alzheimer's, for memory, the memory programs that some of
Um,
these homes have.
they claim to have had. I didn't see it play out in real life, but that was
Yeah.
definitely on their brochure and what they were marketing.
Okay, there
But I didn't
was.
see it play out in real life. And it is what it is. She could have gotten worse care. Okay, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, things could have been worse. But she did the best that she could do. And, one night they called me on a Thursday night and they said, your mom won't take her medicine. And usually I'd say, okay, screw it, and don't give it to her. But then something in my mind said, go. So I drove up to see her. And when
How
I
far
got
was
there,
it?
5 minutes. So when I got there, she was sitting in the hallway. Other people were in the hallway too, but she was sitting literally in the middle of the hallway in her wheelchair. She had both pants legs rolled up, and she didn't show her legs. I'm like, this is interesting. So she goes, what are you doing here? And I said, I came to see you, sweetie. And she said, good, come on, let's go to bed. And I said, okay. So I got her in bed, and I climbed in her bed with her, and we talked for about an hour and a half, and I left. 10 o'clock the next morning, they called and told me she was in a coma. She never woke up.
Wow.
Yeah.
You had some good last-minute time with her, at least.
Yeah.
And one of the great things about if you truly pay attention to someone who needs caretaking, and especially if they're about to make their transition,
Yes.
if they're open and they're talking, they share so much information. The feelings, the thoughts, talk about connection with Source, God, whomever you want to call him.
Somebody
and the
told you
information
to
they
go
got.
when you normally wouldn't have gone, so you heard a voice and you obeyed the voice.
So I'm intuitive, so I pay attention to my intuition. Sorry, I do. Works for me.
All right, listen, we're going to take a break, so we will be right back. Don't go away. Dave Nassani, the Caregiver's Caregiver, has just released his 6th book entitled It's My Life Too, Thrive to Stay Alive as a Caregiver. It was specifically written for caregivers who know they should be putting their needs first, but just don't know how. Dave is the sole caregiver to his wife, Charlene, since 1996. He knows firsthand what caregivers are going through, because he is one. He now speaks all across the country, offering caregivers his amazing caregiver support package. Even the airlines tell us that in the event of an emergency, to put your oxygen mask on first, before you help your child with their mask. They know that those who don't heed their advice often black out, thus becoming unable to help either themselves or their child. And caregivers are exactly the same way. It's My Life Too, Thrive and Stay Alive as a Caregiver will help caregivers who are neglecting their sleep, diet, and social life and learn to put their needs first. Pick up your copy today or buy one for your special caregiver, on sale everywhere and at caregiverdave.com. And we're back with my special guest, Monique Chapman, the unique Monique. And I'm Dave Nassani with my co-host, Adrian Gruberg. And we're talking about Monique's caregiving experience with her mom, which is very interesting and very common and very predictable.
Same story, different person.
Yeah. Was that your only caregiving experience with your mom?
Yeah. I mean,
Lucky you.
Well,
But it
I
was
have
very
a husband.
rewarding, doesn't it? I mean, everyone, talks about how terrible caregiving is, but caregiving can be, if you have the right attitude, a very rewarding, heartfelt experience, right?
Be rewarding, but you go through all of the different emotions. Sometimes you're like, why can't you just get better? Or why can't you do this? And then you have but then you have to take a moment and look at yourself and say, okay, what am I not willing to give to this situation? Okay. When my mom, Alzheimer's was real bad, and before she was placed, I would take her to the store because she loved to go grocery shopping. That was always her thing. And she always wanted to pay with a check. So, 10 minutes later at the cashier, writing out the check, and I would just whisper to people, Alzheimer's, and everybody understood. Now if I rushed her and said, no, you can't do that, that would have been a bad experience for her. The people around me may or may not have looked negatively on it, but I let people know what was going on, communication,
Yeah,
and
that's so
she did
smart.
just fine.
I tell this story all the time. I have a gas station, and one time um, this person came in and didn't realize that his father, his adult person, and the elderly father came in, just followed behind him, didn't know. He looks at him, he says, "What are you doing in here? I told you to stay in the car. You never listen to me." And he's just embarrassing this guy, and his little boy was with him, observing all of this. And I always say, be careful how you treat your elders or how your kids are probably going to treat you.
What was that song, Cats in the Cradle?
Yep.
Cat
Okay.
absolutely.
That comes around, goes around. Okay.
Yep.
So you're the expert. You're a personal development expert. So that means caregiving was easier for you
No,
because you
I'm
had all
still
this
human.
training.
No, I'm still human. And I have my wants and needs, and there's other wants and needs. And at the time, 10 years ago, I had 2 millennials still at home and
Sandwich
3
generation.
dogs. So
Did you feel you had a gift of particular kinds of insight that might have helped you as a caregiver?
no, because when I'm in the middle of a situation, like even talking to you guys now, you're getting me. I'm not looking intuitively to see what I should do or say or anything like that. I'm just living life as a normal person. Hopefully a kind person, but living life as a normal person. And that's, the one I think challenge I had was it was important for me to show kindness and compassion every step of the way. And sometimes I wasn't feeling it here in my heart, but I let it come out anyway.
Right.
Because it was really important to be kind and compassionate, because that made the person, my mom, but that made the person that you're caring for, it gives them peace. Okay.
That is the number one quality a caregiver should have, is compassion and empathy, yes.
Yeah. That's what I did.
And it is what it is.
That's it.
So what words of advice do you have for our caregiving audience regarding taking care of themselves while providing help to their loved ones? It's a balancing act, isn't it?
It's truly a balancing act, and first of all, it's really going to be important for you to truly understand what the person's going through. So if it's cancer, Alzheimer's, or you shared with me on my show that your wife is paralyzed on one side of her body, get information, join support groups, because you can share information, get ideas to fully understand what the person is going through. And then after you do that, for not them, but for you, so that you can have peace of mind, then it's important for you to truly come up with your routine for yourself on a daily basis, whatever that is. And it's important to keep you in the equation, because when you fall out of the equation and you give 99% of that energy to the person that you're caring for, that's when you get burned out. So if you can give at least 75% of your energy to the person that you're caring for and 25% to yourself, that is going to make life a whole lot easier. It's not a walk in the park, folks. It's not. We get our greatest lessons by the toughest situations that we go through.
A lot of people feel sorry for me. They say, "Oh, that poor guy, his wife isn't, the same woman he married." And so many caregivers leave their spouses. We met so many who, our support group says, "Yeah, while I was in the hospital, they served me divorce papers and this and that." And I said, "Oh my gosh, But there are a lot of,
in the first place.
Yeah, and there are a lot of them that have stuck by, and it just depends, did you take your vows seriously or not?
Well, it's that, and too, sometimes people don't realize how difficult and how the person really needs, how much they truly need from you. And some people are just not equipped to give at that level of giving, to do at that level of doing. And it's not a bad thing, it's just that they're not equipped to do it.
And I never realized I'd be doing this. Probably Adrienne didn't either, did you?
Me?
Yeah.
I wasn't surprised. I knew somewhere along the line it was
I
going
was
to happen. I
surprised. I
just,
was a young
you know,
guy, you know.
yeah. Um,
My wife's 10 years older
yeah,
than me, so I was 21.
the diagnosis came out of nowhere. Steve always
Hmm.
had different things happening, with his stomach, with his foot, with this, with that. And then when he had this CAT scan, went to the emergency room with peritonitis, um, they discovered he had lung cancer. So I was curious to know. I mean, I was always there when he needed to go for his treatments. When
Hmm.
your mom went to the facility,
Hmm.
is she getting treatments, or at that point was, because I don't know how that works. If somebody's in a facility and is still getting treatments.
Okay, so this is going to sound absolutely positively horrible. She had filled out an advance directive many years prior. She didn't want treatments. We didn't give her treatments. We just let her go.
Okay.
She was also
Yeah, that's how my
diabetic, and
mother
they were
was.
feeding her. Oh, she can't have sugar, and she can't have that. She's 90. She died at 91. It's like, what stage 4 lung cancer? She can have whatever she
Want to
wants.
Yeah, if
We
prolong
that's
the
have to
pain of
we have to
Alzheimer's.
extend her life. Why? So she can
that's
sit in a
not
wheelchair and
terrible.
watch these people?
It's
No.
money.
Just
It's
let
all about
nature
the
kind of
money.
take its course. She definitely believed in God, and she would about her conversations, if you will, that she had with God when she would go to sleep at night, because I'd go see her. She goes, God and I sat down and talked last night, and this is what we talked about. And I'm like, okay, well, good for you. Or sometimes it was, well, your dad and I had dinner. My dad has been dead for 46 years. But, she would,
And you didn't argue with her, did you? The
because
saying that
everything
she
is
was
a
wrong.
value. No,
No sense in
everything is a
arguing.
value. So just let it go and go with the program, and especially at her advanced age. Now, if she was a younger woman, it might have been a little bit different, but at 91,
Yeah.
honey, enjoy. Okay.
I can just hear some caregivers saying, "Oh, I wish I could do what you're doing. I just wish I could be that person,"
Just
um,
do it.
because they would feel so guilty. Guilt is a terrible thing for caregivers because they feel like they're not doing enough or they're not doing it good enough. How do you get rid of guilt?
Don't
The
have it in the
killer.
first place.
Don't have it in the first place. Well, it's easy for you to say,
Well, no,
but
I
I've
mean,
already got it. Now what do I do?
okay, so seriously, if you're feeling guilty, what are you not doing? Because if you're feeling guilty about something, generally there's something you're not doing or something that you could do
Well,
better. So,
there's something
and
called
again, if you decide to
undeserved
take that
guilt.
time for yourself and you're coming from a place of fullness, okay, then there's no room for guilt because you're full and you're helping somebody else. And sometimes it's okay to say no. It's a very
Right.
good word, and no is a complete sentence. You don't need to explain it at all. It's just
Right.
no. You can say it with a smile. No. And
What
For
let
is
it
it
go.
people
about no that
to
you don't
practice in the mirror
understand?
saying no 100
There
different
you go.
ways. No, 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 no. How many times can
Yeah,
you say no? Because that's my wife's favorite word, no, and she can say it 100 different ways, and
yeah.
she has
And you
fun saying
understand
that word.
each inflection, don't you?
Absolutely. Sometimes she just says it with her eyes, and you don't. She doesn't have to say a word.
No.
Oh, guilt. It's a terrible thing, and you're
Yeah,
right.
no,
It's going to
it
happen.
truly, guilt is really bad. But again, if you're living your life as best you can, there's always going to be, like some level of guilt. But if you're doing the best that you can, and truly in your heart you're doing the best you can, forgive yourself and move on. Because there's no perfection. People are looking, oh, it's
No.
got to be perfectly a certain way. No, it doesn't exist. So you have
I
guilt
mean,
if you're looking for perfection.
you talked about just letting her live, and you know she was 90 years old, not to go
Hmm.
through this. And then, but before that, you said this is going to sound terrible. And I mean, I don't think it sounds terrible at all. I think what has to happen with other people is if there is a conversation where the directives get written down, and you understand what the person really wants, then if you're following what they want to be done, there's really no reason for guilt
And
in
you don't
that
have to share
aspect
it.
of it.
You don't have to
Yeah.
share it with your judgmental friends, so that you
Right.
feel guilty. This is between
Right.
you and her, and
Yeah.
her
Well,
wishes, and don't advertise it.
you can advertise, and when your judgmental friends make a comment, since you have a Christian show, I'm not going to tell you what I would say, but you can politely have another version of no.
No, I tell them the same thing. You and I are on the same page on that because I have an advance directive. My mother had an advance directive. And she used to say, "Oh, why is God leaving me here? I'm in so much, misery. This is torture." And it's true. And my mother-in-law would just torture herself because she was in denial about her dementia. There's nothing wrong
Wow.
with me. I can
Yeah.
remember everything. Yet she'll call me 10 times a day saying, "Someone just broke into the house again and they hid my keys, they hid my wallet." And then when they would show up, "Oh, they must have brought it back because they want to drive me crazy," and this and that. And I forgot my point. I was going to make a point, but I forgot it.
When my mother didn't have Alzheimer's,
Uh-huh.
but she was when my father died, she became a little paranoid because she'd always been protected, and she started to hide things.
Yeah.
From the
And
people
with
who were going to
age,
steal them.
she started to forget where she hid
Yes.
those things. So so-and-so stole this, and so-and-so stole that, and so-and-so stole this. And when I went to close up her house, of course I found everything.
Yeah.
But it was purely a matter of just not remembering, and you don't have to have Alzheimer's or dementia not to remember.
Yes,
God
I'm
knows
still
that.
looking for something I hid
Me
2 weeks
too.
ago, and I'm like, okay, can't find it, but you know it appears when it's supposed to. My mom, with her hiding with the Alzheimer's, she loved books, as do I, and she had this habit of putting a $10 bill in different books, but she couldn't remember what book. So after she passed and my sister and I are cleaning out
page?
everything, we found $3,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, in
That
$10
was
bills.
my grandfather was like,
Yeah, so it was like, thank you, Mom.
but you couldn't throw anything out without
nothing.
looking.
No,
Couldn't give it away without opening the book. It was
Yeah, so I
and we
remember what I
hardly
was
ever
going to
threw
say now.
anything out anyway, because my mom, God bless her, she was a hoarder. I mean, floor to ceiling boxes, and
yeah.
Right.
thank God I didn't develop that trait. But so you didn't know what was in things, and you had to look. She was living in Florida and taking care of her mom when her mom was alive, and then when her mom passed, she moved to California to be near us, and she shipped her stuff out. She paid $12,000 to ship
Whoa.
magazines from 1956.
Oh my.
And other things. I mean, mail from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and this is before she passed. She had boxes full, and it was like, oh my goodness, Mom. But she goes, I can't throw it out. I'm going to need it.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
No?
So I was going to say, my mom is advanced directive, and she had a foreign doctor. I think it was from India or something. And I think those are more understanding people than the American doctors because they says, well, she's not eating, she's not swallowing, we want to put a ventilator. It says, no, she has an advanced directive, no tubes, nothing to prolong her life. Well, what about food and water? He says, you know what, if she can't eat it on her own, then no, she's not going to eat.
Right.
So they deprived her of water and food, but then she developed an infection in her bladder. You can see the dark blood coming through the tube, or urine. It's supposed to be urine, and it was like the color of dark blood. And I says, well, she's in pain, so give her morphine and give her an antibiotic, and water to swallow it, of course. And she lasted a couple of days, and we had a good time while she was with us. But this was her golden opportunity to prolong this thing that she wanted hastened, And I didn't feel guilty about it. My brother and my sister didn't make me feel guilty about it, because if I was there, I mean, that's why she filled out the stupid thing. And that's why I fill it out, because I know where I'm going when I die. She knew where she was going, and she's in a happy place. And
Well, you know what?
don't
Even if you
feel
don't know,
guilty.
you're going
That's all I'm saying.
someplace. You know, you're going
Gotta be better
someplace
than this
even if you
place.
don't know. So, well, you never know. So just live the best life you can possibly have and treat others the way you'd like to be treated just with yourself, and just move forward.
You know, we are
Because,
surrounded by
there's so much
creation.
unknown.
And when there's a creation, there's a creator. And so that's just my philosophy. So
Okay.
he made us. He put us on this earth. He gave us this thing on our head, and the mind and the personality. And that's called faith. And live,
There you go.
you know, there is good and there's evil, and we see it every day.
Oh, there's good and there's evil.
There's good and
Yeah.
there's evil. There's
Definitely.
don't be evil. That's all I can say about that. As Forrest Gump would say, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay.
So I changed through my wife's experience being her caregiver. I changed through the 2008 fiasco where I almost lost my house. I almost lost my business. I almost went bankruptcy. I lost like a lot of money. I won't tell you how much, but and I had a lot of debt, and I defaulted on it. And I always say, I said in my book, you know, I wouldn't want to repeat that for $1 million, but I wouldn't want it to have ever happened, because I like what it has changed me into for $1 billion.
Okay. Experience.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's that's what changes us, our good experiences and especially our bad experiences, because that's how you know what the character of a person is. Not when there's money in the bank and you're getting along with your wife and you got you're in the peak of health, but when your doctor says you have cancer, and when your wife gives you divorce papers, and your CPA says you need to go bankrupt, now you're going to find out what you're really worth. And
and then you're going to find out too who truly is with you.
Yeah.
After
So
not
I'm
truly
assuming
with you, they run away.
I'm assuming the experience with your mom has drastically changed you. Why don't you
I don't know
share
if it's
some of that?
drastic, but I grew. And the growth was, as I said, I'd go to the nursing home, and I would, have fits every freaking day with dealing with the nurses and the doctors and, patients. I mean, they had her sitting at one table where the man to her left would reach over and take her food. And I'm like, that's not a good thing.
Somebody should be watching that.
Well, they weren't. So
Yeah.
I learned to be able to communicate very clearly what I wanted in regards to her with healthcare. I learned that it's important to communicate with people in that type of setting in a way that they can hear you, that's not accusatory, and that's not off-putting.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Because
I do
you
the
could
same
mean
thing. The
something.
squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Yeah, and you could mean something, with the highest integrity, but if it's taken wrong, that puts a little, really janky energy into the situation. So my biggest thing was patience and communicating with people who I was very angry with.
Yes.
In a positive way.
I found when my mother-in-law was in the hospital for the last time, it was a long. She had lymphoma, and she was 93. She'd gone through 3 rounds of chemo since she was 89. I mean,
wow.
She was extraordinary. I mean, little tiny lady, tons and tons of strength, and really. And I learned I needed to appear professional and communicate on a level with the nurses where they saw how cooperative I was being, so that when the time came and I really needed their help, and that I hadn't been a nuisance, that I was a willing participant in all of this, So when I needed them, I needed them,
Yeah.
and they were there. And it was purely a matter of communication and speaking in a way that they were going to listen to me.
Yeah, and you have to be heard, because if you can't communicate in a way that people can truly hear what you're saying, not just listening, but truly hear and
Right.
be able to digest what you're saying, it's a
Yes.
no-win situation for all. And it takes a little skill in dealing with the different personalities, because I mean the healthcare workers are people too. They have their wants, their needs, their ups, their downs, their
Yeah.
goods, their bad. Okay,
Sure.
you have no idea what went on in their life before they showed up for their shift. So there's many different types of energies intermingling, and it's
Yep.
important to be, what I'm going to say, within your own integrity, and communicate with them. And then when things didn't go well, I was not shy at all about calling in other forces like the
I mean,
state.
the other thing is, as far as being intuitive, I do a really good cold reading of people. I mean, and that is very valuable,
Yes.
because when you see who someone is quickly and can adapt, that served me very well.
And believe what you see the first time. Don't look for something 3 or 4, times down the
Right.
road. What you see
Right.
is what you get time one.
They are
And you don't
who
have
they
to have
are.
judgment on it, because we're all doing our own little thing, if you will. So,
Right.
well, that's what they decided to do. Great, good for them. Yeah, I mean, there's no judgment. Nobody's better than anybody else.
No.
It's just about you doing you and allowing other people to do them.
Right.
Hey, we're going to take another break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Anytime we suffer loss, we grieve. And a lot of people don't realize what even the grief process is. But it could be 5 to 7 steps, ranging from denial, I don't believe this is happening, anger, oh my gosh, I'm so upset this is happening, to a form of bargaining, how can I get out of this, to depression, which is a very serious thing because that often leads to suicide. And then finally, after you realize you have no more control over your situation and you're totally okay with the new normal that it brings, that wonderful, wonderful place called acceptance. One Arm, One Leg, 100 Words, Overcoming Unbelievable Hardships is about Charlene, a stroke survivor. Back in 1996, Charlene was a healthy, normal, very active 52-year-old woman whose amazing talents resembled that of both a Martha Stewart and a Wonder Woman. But all that changed when she suffered a massive stroke that left her severely speech impaired and paralyzed on the right side. Who am I? My name is David. I've had the privilege of being Charlene's husband since 1975. We had a wonderful fairy tale, storybook-like courtship that culminated in our marriage a year later. Charlene had just come out of a marriage where after 10 years, she received 2 black eyes and a broken nose by her former husband when he came home high on speed. Charlene believed in no second chances of any kind for abuse, so she left. Finding herself all alone in the world with her 5 and 10-year-old daughters Cynthia Lorraine and Deborah Lynn, she started raising them by herself for the next 2 years. Then fate brought us all together. After falling in love with Charlene, Cindy, and Debbie, our love then produced Rebecca Elizabeth. We had a wonderful, normal life for the next 20 years. But today, things are very different for everyone. How about the reaction of 9-time Grammy and Dove Award recipient, the godfather of contemporary gospel Christian music, Andre Crouch? Charlene just won't let the promises of God go, and she has not let her circumstances get in the way of her faith. She's not just a survivor, she's more than a conqueror, as the Bible states. You'll be encouraged by her testimony, regardless of what you're going through. Available everywhere. And we're back with Monique, the unique Monique Chapman. I like that. I'm Dave Nassani. I'm with Adrian Gruberg from the Caregiver Space. And, so many people, Monique, when their loved one dies, transitions, they get depressed because they got so wrapped up, especially, if they've done this for years or decades. I mean, I'm on my 23rd year. And it's like their whole identity was wrapped up, and they just have an identity crisis. And Adrian even has a group for them, aftercare. Many of them just can't go on, and so we recommend to a lot of them to start volunteering at a senior center. Keep doing, if that's what you want to do, keep doing it. What advice do you have for some people like that? And how are you doing? I mean, did you feel anything like that?
Well, I have a little bit of a different belief system than your listeners. So after Mom died, I wasn't there when she passed away. I didn't want to be there. It was understood none of us was going to be there because our belief system is you don't have to be there. So I was sitting on the couch. They called me. They said she had passed. And I asked my oldest son, who was home at the time, to come sit with me because, frankly, I was scared. I don't do dead bodies well, or the concept of it. I just don't. I can talk to them, but I just, I didn't want to do that.
You
so
don't see dead people, huh?
I do see. That's the problem. So my oldest son came and he sat next to me. We were just watching TV. He was holding my hand. And all of a sudden he goes, stop. What is this? And I'm like, oh, crap, that's Grandma. I didn't say that to him. I just let it pass. And then a few minutes afterwards, I said, sweetie, did it feel like spider webs by your ear? He goes, yeah, this massive spider web was in my ear. I said, Grandma was telling you something, but I don't know what. So, life, she proved, if I didn't know already, that life still goes on. The soul, the energy of the person still goes on. So I didn't really have a identity crisis around that because I knew she was okay. She had made the transition, breathing, not breathing, and she would be fine. She would find her way. For those who do go into a crisis and they can't go on, it's going to be really important for you to find something to do. Whether it's senior. If someone said to me, "Go volunteer in a senior home," I wouldn't have been able to do it. Okay, but I found I had other outlets. So just because they are no longer here in the physical, it's important that your life go on. So if you choose to get in the bed and stay there for 10 years, or you climb into the vodka bottle, you can do that. Or you can decide, okay, well, now I'm free to be me again, and I am going to do things that are of interest.
And not everybody, goes through depression. Adrian, do you know the numbers? I mean, from your experience,
No.
Is it just like 10% of the people? It's a minority, isn't it?
I don't think so.
You think it's more?
Well, I mean, people have normal. There's normal grief.
Well, they're going to grieve the loss. They're going to miss
there's a
them and all that. But I'm
process.
talking
As
the ones
to
who
grief,
can't get over it.
Yeah,
After
exactly.
5-6 years, they're still grieving. They still,
That's
Well, but they're choosing not to get over it at that point.
right.
Because we all have
At
choices.
that-
Every morning that
feels
we
good.
God allows our eyes to open and we figure out that we're still breathing, we have choice.
Very much. I mean, my mother-in-law seems to be coming up a lot today. When she was 63 when she lost her husband to lung cancer, and she knew she wanted to volunteer and do something, but she didn't want to be a candy striper. She didn't want to work at a senior citizens home. She didn't want to be in the hospital reception area or anything like that. So she found in one of the little the little digests that have all the want ads at the supermarket, there was a page that said "Learn Braille." And she took to that. She learned Braille. She got special typewriters that gave her a computer. I mean, her whole life changed after her husband died. And she made all these new friends and did all of this wonderful work. And the most amazing thing was, I have a block away from me a Braille library.
Oh, wow.
So when she was recovering and we were walking around the block and I said, "This is a Braille library," she said, "Let me see if my books are here."
There you go.
And Some of them were, and it
Hmm.
was like she really found something that was going to be positive and not it's depressing. I mean, being around seniors for a lot of people can be very depressing,
Yeah.
and
It-
she just
Yeah.
wanted to do something worthwhile and help humanity.
well,
Yeah.
yay, good for her. I'm glad
Yeah, it
she,
was great.
listened to her own self and she did something for herself
She
and
did.
in turn for others.
Yeah.
Yes, very
My wife
much.
hated the support group that they recommended she go to because it was full of 90 years old and 85 years old.
Right,
And she
right,
was a young woman. She was 52 years old when she had a stroke.
right.
And she just said, I don't want to be around these people. I'm young. I want to be around young people, young, normal people. And so, I guess I also would like that as well. So we're getting up on the end of our hour. Why is it important to honor the person that you're caring for? And how do you help them keep their dreams alive? Interesting
Well,
question.
it depends on what they have going on, but honoring them
Mm.
is, truly being present with and for them. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
having the patience, taking the time, showing them the love that they've shown you, or if you didn't get that love throughout your life, showing them the love you thought you would like to have had from them. Okay,
Exactly.
so that covers the whole thing there. Second part of your question was honor them and then what, to help them?
Um,
Sorry.
to help keep their dreams alive,
Sometimes it's not
or are
important
your
to keep
dreams not their dreams necessarily,
sometimes
and you
it's
don't
not
have to take on that.
important to keep their dreams alive, because when someone comes into earth and they grow up and they do whatever they do, when they leave,
They're done.
you can either let it go or you can keep it alive. If it floats your boat, if it doesn't float your boat, let it go. Somebody else will pick it up
Unless
and
you're
run with
Martin
it.
Luther King and the dream needs to go on,
And
Oh,
maybe,
I
maybe
won't
not.
make it to the promised land, but
Yeah.
others are
yeah.
going there. It was an amazing show, and I appreciate you coming on and answering our questions. They were very important
Sharing your
questions.
experiences,
Yeah,
yes.
well,
Yes,
thank
we've
you
never
both
had
for
on
having me.
anyone like you before, have we, Adrian? I don't think we have.
No,
You mean intuitive, black, female, old?
intuitive.
Enough of that. Thank you so much for being on the show, and
Thank
we
you for having me.
appreciate you. And oh, did I ask? What if somebody wants to get a hold of you? Let me get your
Oh, um,
information.
you can look at my website, and that's MoniqueChapman.com. My name,
Hmm.
Oh, that's
MoniqueChapman.com.
easy.
You'll find everything you need to know.
And Adrian, you're at the caregiverspace.org, and you also have a Facebook
Yes.
page with 168,000
No,
followers and
165.
Okay.
165.
You
And
know
you
what
have a
happens is when they change their algorithm, the
yep,
numbers change too.
Oh,
yes, that
okay.
darn Facebook. It's pay for play now. You got the money. What was that old song? You got the money, honey. I got the time.
Yeah.
We'll go honky tonk. Okay, you don't want to hear me sing. And I'm caregiverdave.com. Go there, and we're giving away free gifts, 3 free gifts to caregivers just to help you get back on the track, help you realize that you need a support group. Everybody needs a support group. I needed one. I couldn't. But that's where I learned that I had to take care of my needs first. I didn't even know what a caregiver was. And so I wish that I knew me when I first became a caregiver. I wish I had a caregiverdave.com to go to because it would have been a whole lot easier.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
So
you're
thank
yeah.
you,
providing a nice
Adrian.
service.
Thank you, Monique. And you have a great day, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing.